All right, thank you. Any other questions? All right, hearing none, I think let's thank Mark for his contribution and. Thank you very much, Mark. And before we move on to the next item, I think that there was a lost item, or perhaps two lost items. I think it's a bag and an umbrella. Is that correct? So,
a suitcase and an umbrella over there. We just brought it up from 11:39 because it's going to close in an hour. So.
All right. So if you lost a suitcase or an umbrella, then Juan is your man. Okay. So we have the next presentation. We'll move ahead with no further ado. We are 15 minutes behind. It is by. Okay. So we have Filippo Zatti and Rosa Giovanna Baresi from the University of Florence have developed a paper on stablecoins. Can a currency be stable in itself? An economic law analysis of the concept of stability in the case of stablecoins. This is they are both at the University of Florence. Filippo Zatti is an associate professor of economic law, where he is also the scientific coordinator for the research unit Blockchains and Artificial Intelligence for Business, Economics, and Law, aka Babel. So, Filippo, over to you.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Jeffrey Goodall. We share the same position in NACPA as academic advisory member. So it's an opportunity to meet in person. Thank you so much. And very quick, I would say, Paolo Tasca, but I want to thank Paolo Tasca, and all the organizers and staff, Chloe and Ignacio. Thank you so much for everything. It was important for us for your support. Okay, difficult behavior or difficult task for us because we are legal scholars. So it's very difficult for legal scholars to be heard by people colleagues that come from other disciplines. But I try to do that. We think as legal scholar that the meaning of words is really relevant. It's really relevant because I think for blockchain in general, we have a problem to define what we mean for specific concepts, and stablecoin are one of these concepts. Why economic law analysis? Something, when I see this landscape, it's very difficult to talk about economic law analysis because we don't know exactly what it is, but it's more a method. And we have so the opportunity to consider the institutional duality of the stablecoins. What does it mean? But we have two perspectives, the micro and the macro sides of the problem. The concept is to start from the economic facts, not to start to something that is theoretical. One of the problems that I observe, I've since been studying blockchain since 2017, problem is that we try to understand the phenomenon according to the legal categories or the ordinary categories that we already know. That's a problem because doing so, we don't understand new phenomena. And blockchain is totally new, not as a technology, but for the effect that it has on the physical space. So I don't want to stay in this slide, but for this slide, you see, when we talk about micro effect on stablecoin, for example, we have a lot of issues that are part of the traditional finance, governance of the asset managers, relation with traditional financial intermediaries, and consumer protection. On the other side, we have effect on the payment system, monetary policy, internationally monetary system. And for considering that, we have to start from the very beginning. So, premises. There is a very, very short, yes, namely financial economics, as we have heard this morning, and but very limited economic perspective, just central banks or international organization. But legal analysis is very, very short. We have a couple of papers till now, really interesting. The evolution of stablecoins. I remember when I was in Edinburgh in 2018, was only Tether, and told me, I can say now, that's 5 years almost, it's a scam, no? Because it's possible there is a peg of 1 to 1. Then we have had Circle Center, obviously, Circle with Binance, but after those two initial stablecoins, we have many other models of stablecoins. I don't want to make an advertisement, it's not a solicitation for investment, but these days there is a standard.io, for example, it's very complex, where you have everything. This is why I asked your colleague here, yes, you, sorry, this morning I asked financial scheme, no? Because standard, you find everything in standard. You have DAO, you have pool, you have seniorage. It's a mix of everything. So why blockchain if we have these kind of mixes? No, it's very complex to understand. And also the struggle. Yes, we have a struggle. Bitcoin was born in 2008, and the first block was January 3rd, as we know. But after 13 years, no more, 13, 14 years, there is still a struggle between the traditional landscape, traditionally political schemes and regulation frameworks. So we have from one side the decentralized finance, and from the other side the introduction of the CBDC as, I would say, something rejection, no rejection in effect after Libra were considered. So it's very complicated. Anchoring to traditional finance. Until stablecoins, the contact between the traditional finance or the physical world and the crypto space was only through the exchange. Stablecoin, the second contact. And we have traditional, I have to say, the stablecoins becomes the easy way or easiest way to transfer funds from traditional finance to decentralized finance. And there is also implicit, intrinsic in the concept of stablecoin, the aspect that they are private monies. Here we have a question, an issue of production of monies. Who produces money? Not only the bank, the traditional financial system, but this time also the stable coin. And so we have again, according to the institutional duality scheme, to analyze this concept, to have to evaluate the micro and the macro sides of the problem. I don't want to read, I think you have already done. So why, sorry, have they named, or I named as a name stable coins? Okay, so you can take many statements. I only taken this one because according to my opinion, are very interesting. The first one is a former central bank of the People's Republic of China. And it's very interesting. The problem, you see the date, when I lecture, usually to my students, I highlight the dates of the phenomenon because remember, as a legal scholar who study, and yes, I study financial regulation, dates are very relevant for us. Phenomena has not if you consider the history of financial crisis, you see that after every financial crisis, you have a new regulation somehow. So it's very important here that you have after the global financial crisis and in the same year of the Bitcoin, these considerations. regarding the macro aspects and the international monetary system. So stable in the long run, what? International reserve currency. Today we are short. I don't want to, my colleagues is going to talk about another aspect of stability is finality. So I don't want to waste and take her time, but you have to understand that here we are talking about, sorry, special drawing rights of the International Monetary Fund. So something complex. It can be linked to the notion of stable. Here, Shigala is the founder of Gold, something like that, I don't remember. And now is one of the co-founders of Standard IO. They not me date, okay, this is just an example, but it's very interesting here. I know, perhaps many of you don't know this side of the issue, but we have the private gold standard as a possible scheme to frame and to interpret stablecoin. And then very icon-green, very recently, privatization of the payments function. All these features, I think, are very interesting. The first contact between the two words, a developer will it. I don't remember now his project, but was 2012. And it's very interesting. What is useful to do a master coin, the second generation adopting on Bitcoin? To fix the two biggest barriers to widespread Bitcoin adoption, stability and security. In which sense? I'm going to finish just highlighting some points. Stability in that case is just a problem of volatility of the price. For the system, for the traditional finance, the problem is not low volatility. If you think of the Argentina pesos, sorry, Claudia, for that. It's just a good example after 3 financial crises. It's not based on the blockchain, but it is a problem of volatility. So if you go in Argentina, perhaps they want to take Bitcoin with their wallet, then the peso, I suppose. And the problem is for our traditional finance scheme and the regulations to maintain purchasing power. You know, if you think of Republic of Weimar and you buy the bread with the luggage, you think why is necessary to have this kind of attention by the political regulators and favoring some finances of intermediaries and the consequence of the system as a whole. And I'm going to finish to leave the floor to Rosa Giovanna Baresi. What is the idea of stability in another word? Because every time we talk about the idea of transaction stability, whatever we want on the blockchain, but in a centralized words. But what about the decentralized, a possible decentralized state network? In this case, stability is something different. And we have to understand the function of the codes, rules in the new economy. And the problem is they are, how to say, compatible with the legal rules. And this question, I think that today has not an answer. And the problem is that one, not to regulate, but what and how to regulate. And I finish saying, think of this specific point of the payment system, finality. And you see that in legal terms is something very different from what we conceive in blockchain and technological sense. Thank you, Rosa Giovanna. The floor is yours. You are very well now, so.
Okay. So first of all, thank you for the invitation to Professor Tasca and to University College of London. And following the analysis of Professor Zatti, I would like to focus on an aspect of stability, another aspect, so the finality. So the thing is, we try to talk about the finality of payment. So the finality is an act of payment that constitutes the settlement of a pre-existing obligation. So we can say that finality makes a payment stable. If we say that, can we expand the concept of finality to stablecoins? This is the question that I tried to address. So let's see if it can work in the second. Oh, now works. Now works. Seems it's kind of this it. So we do have a traditional theory. We can say that historically the concept of finality was developed alongside with the invention of money. And since then, money transfers have been deemed irrevocable and have the power of discharging the debtor creditor obligation. So the evolution of the concept of finality is constantly followed by this history of insolvency proceedings. As bankruptcy has always been the most frequent origin for assessing the limits of finality in the law courts. So the thing is that here we don't have all the things. I don't know if you can see. Okay, so we have all the three steps. I don't know if you can read it. So after reaching finality, a transfer of money is deemed irrevocable and discharge the obligation to pay. And to reach finality, both the partners must signify, okay, I might know that we don't have the number of like this way. It's better like close. So must signify their agreement in the proven way that the transaction has acquired the legal validity and can be opposed to third parties. And judges can decide whether a transaction reached finality by interpreting the will of the partners. So these three things are very important because we now can understand the difference between the cash-based payment and the bank-based payment. And the thing is that with the cash-based payment, they're final as soon as the money changed hands. Instead, with the bank-based payment, in this case, they are subject to the clawback 100 hours ago. So the main difference between money payment and bank-based is that the latter is subject to, like I said, the clawback until midnight of the day has been executed. So the 0-hour rules void all the banking transaction executed by the insolvent participant, starting from the 0 hour of the day of the insolvency court. The court declared insolvency. So we do have, to go over this, we have the settlement finality directive that said that any transfer of funds executed on a specific designated system is irrevocable, instantly settled, and protect against insolvency proceedings. So the principle of settlement finality is that any transfer of funds executed on a specific designated system has these three characteristics that I just said. And according to this principle, the moment an order enters a designated system is successful and it's a validation process. So this marks the discharge of the sender's obligation and at the same time make the transfer irrevocable, unconditional, and unenforceable. So you can just see, I list all the steps, so we can go over. I understood that we don't have enough time, but the important thing is with the definition of a designated system, we moved the concept of finality from the discharge obligation, that was the traditional concept of finality, to another step, so to the exchange of data. Applying the traditional theory of finality to the decentralized finance is something we can say tricky. So while the law system lacks a shared agreement about whether digital asset may be regarded as a personal property, all admit person have the right to those assets. So we can see that there is a kind of a situation that the LT allows multiple parties to keep individual copies of a shared ledger, and a consensus process leads those parties to agree to a specific update of the ledger. context. However, the probabilistic nature of consensus building means that there is no guarantee that it will always reach a successful conclusion, because there is something that can, from external elements that can change, like the hard forks or the company liquidation, or, for example, also attacks by the hacker, all the three. So we do have a first finality hurdle that nobody guaranteed that the consensus process will always reach a successful termination, or a second one that there is external, like I said, external events that can influence the state of the ledger after the consensus has been reached. So we say that, like we say, we have the probabilistic element. So on the distributed ledger, settlement finality becomes a probabilistic concept. For a transaction to be written on the ledger, we must wait the consensus process to be terminated. And the longer a transaction has been written on the ledger, the less likely it could be reversed in the future. So we can underline this, and also have like an example that the Australian Stock Exchange has post-terminated project to the blockchain-based automated trading system. For this reason, and I quote what the chairman said, has the right to recognize and close it the problem why to release the technology design for just replacement was an unnecessary decision. And the independent report was found significant gaps and deficiency in ASIC's program delivery capacities, and there are significant challenges in the technology design. And don't go ahead, it's blocked. Okay, now we have it. So this is a very important report. In July 2022, the BIS Committee on Payment and Market Infrastructure and the Board of International Organization Security Commission defined the stablecoin arrangements. And it was defined as a platform delivering a set of services to support an instrument purporting to be used both as a means of payment and a store of value. It's very important. This is the first time they talk about stablecoin like a means of payment. And clearly pointed out what are the elements of this stablecoin arrangement. So they clearly define the point at which a transfer of a stablecoin through the operational settlement method of use becoming irrevocable and unconditional. This is always the same adjective we saw at the beginning. Ensure that there is a clear legal basis that acknowledges and supports the finality of the transfer, and have a robust mechanisms for preventing any misalignment between the state of the ledger and the legal finality, and ensure that the legal finality of a transfer, once it occurs, is maintained regardless of the competing for the states of the ledger. Of course, we don't have the bill yet, it's not a law yet, but we don't have these three elements right now. So at the present, there is no available stablecoin platform that does comply with these law requirements. Don't move. Okay, no, we have. So we have the things that we just said. We have an evolution from the traditional theory to the new theory. This is the new data ownership theory of finality, and this comes from 2012 CPMI and IOSCO principle that define the exchange of value settlement system. And so if a financial market infrastructure settles transactions that involve the settlement of the legal obligation, for example, security or foreign exchange transaction, it should eliminate principal risk by conditioning the final settlement of one obligation upon the final settlement of the other. So again, we move from the old obligation-based approach to the data ownership approach. So the settlement is described as a mutual transfer information and control rights.
5 minutes left.
5 minutes left. Okay, I have to go very, very quickly. So maybe we skip this. Okay. Okay, I go just the right of the last slide. Let's see. So we have this UK Financial Service and Market Bills, and it's very important because on 20th of July, and this bill was amended, but it's not yet approved by the House of Lords, because for this we know that will be considered a law, but it's very important that the principle of a digital settlement asset, so that's like a digital representation of our rights. And it is defined with these 3 points that I wrote on the slide. So it can be used for settlement of payment obligation, can be transferred, stored, and traded electronically, and the leverages any technology supporting the record of storage of data. They may be DLT or not, may be cryptographically secured or not. So this is very important because it's UK at least try to be more precise on the regulation of stablecoin. And they very quickly, since July to now, they really move very, very quickly and try to make this bill a law. So we have 2 questions. Can we extend the concept of finality to stablecoin? Or how to regulate this? We can say alternative finance. I can say no, we cannot extend it yet. The concept of finality to stablecoin for the reason that I tried to underline, even though some slides are missing, so maybe it was harder to follow my reasoning. But we can say that we do have, I can say 3 alternatives. So the old style finality cannot be extended to these new means of payment, even though people are using them and try to be integrated in the legal words. So the thing is, how can we regulate this alternative finance? The first tentative was to use the means of analogy, and that's absolutely failed, just because it's a very little hope of integrating new concepts into legislation dating back to the Code Napoleon. So this is a really, really new means. So. And the second alternative is to create an ad hoc legislation, and we have to say the UK, like we just said, in the USA and also in Europe, they are working on this. And the third alternative is like we can call like a transformative contract. So the kind of contract that a new type of frame that we can build just adhering to a service contract, like for example, a contract that they were when, for example, for Facebook Meta, when we signed the term of use, right? So we can say that the new finality model is based on the exchange of rights, like we said before, on intangible objects and not on a discharge of obligation, like it was the classical theory. And unfortunately, we cannot use, in the legal sense, the blockchain and the DLT for the finality of stablecoin. Thank you. And I want to say thank you to Professor Zatti and to Professor Ali Nejal-Malayeri. We wrote a paper together. It was a wonderful experience. And I want to thank you for your patience and apologize for the slide that was not how it was supposed to be. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Try to make this work. Thank you very, very much to our presenters, Filippo and Rosa Giovanna. Okay, so does anyone have any questions? Yes, Tommaso.
Yes, just a curiosity. I mean, I've always been very puzzled by by stablecoins. I mean, we know that no country has been able to keep its own currency pegged to any other currency. Historically, it never happened. So it's obvious that algorithm cannot do that. But
Sorry, can you? I barely hear you.
so it's clear that algorithm cannot keep something stable while humans has not been able to do that. Of course, for a while you can, and that's also historically proved. So to some extent, I think that at the end, all the issues that came out so far has been, I mean, lack of proper management more than anything else. Is it correct in the sense, I mean, people were claiming they were collateral that they didn't, or I mean, or simply they didn't apply their own rules the proper way. Certainly, the Terra Luna case that we studied was obviously something unsustainable. That's just a from any perspective.
Okay, it's a good question. I have only a couple of minutes, but we can stay talking about that perhaps all day long. Okay, this morning I was very interested between for the presentation of I would see the person that presentation of Clear Bank. Why? Because we have many reasons to believe that stablecoin is an attempt to reproduce all the phenomena in the crypto space. For example, free banking in the United States from 1865 on. And also the narrow banking phenomenon in certain sense, where you don't lend anything else, and you lend only what you take as a deposit. So, according to my opinion, the problem, today there was no enough room, but perhaps when we have completed the draft of the paper, you can read it. The idea is money, in the sense of currency, is strictly linked to sovereignty. And stablecoin are just a medium without sovereignty at the moment. And they try to search sovereignty in the fiat for this reason. So I don't think it's a problem of, as we have in the MiCA regulation proposal at the moment, it's not a problem of asset reference tokens and to have a management very similar to mutual funds or something like that. It's something different. And the problem that the blockchain space try to use for many reasons. I don't want to, I can't talk now, but try to adopt old solutions to something new that is incompatible, according to my opinion, because it's something that has a lot of problems. Finally, just an example, because the problem, when I think of the legal tender definition, for us as legal scholar, legal tender in such every jurisdictions, I think every jurisdiction in the world, not depending on the kind of legal system, is the possibility to know that you have, how to say, obey to the obligation. You have satisfied your creditor. If you play in other currencies, we have an example interesting here in the physical space in Scotland, for example, where there is the sterling, the pound. Let me know if I'm wrong about that. There is also the Scottish pound. It is officially there. And if you spend in England, you can have a refusal to accept it. And something like that, because we don't have a legal landscape. So what I think is important also for the CBDC, because the CBDC is not only problem of pilot test of privacy and so on, is just a piece of the problem. The problem is, do we have a really sound, stable international monetary system? No, since the start of the 70s of the last century. So we have to do that, and the blockchain can be useful to foster this reform. I don't know if Professor asked, I answer as a legal scholar, honestly. Thank you.
All right, shall we take another question? Thank you.
Thank you very much for the presentation. I have a question related to the problems that are introduced by the probabilistic nature of finality in permissionless blockchains. Can you hear me, Rosa?
Yes.
Yeah. So, probabilistic definition of finality in blockchains. Can you please elaborate which is the effect that it has on which are the legal implications of this? I am thinking in two directions here. On the one hand, that because it's a fundamental problem also for the protocols. When do we say that the transactions have taken place? Okay, you mentioned that when the network grows, you say that the finality takes place at a shorter time. Actually, it's the opposite. And in many cases, and this is the second part of my question, the problem that exists is that some of these platforms become very, very centralized over time. So you have few validators that have a lot of power. And when they have accumulated a lot of power, they start to produce a lot of blocks, which has a very interesting dual effect. On the one hand, the process of validation becomes not anymore decentralized as it should be, but on the other side, the finalization is faster. And so, which is the effect, just to summarize, the second part of my question is, what happens when these processes of validation that should be decentralized become centralized from a legal point of view? Or if there is a notion that you can say, no, the system is too centralized because only 4 miners are creating all the blocks.
The problem is to define the exact point when you are discharged of your obligation and then there is the exchange of the rights. So the point is, that's why the UK put this new report that I just showed you with the underline that we need a rule, a legal rule, to define when there is this exchange of rights. So that's why we cannot, we say that it's a probabilistic, that's a stochastic, that this is the problem. Because there is no specific point on time that define when there is this exchange. And this is, for the legal point of view, is a big problem because of all the consequences. That's why. So we need that there is a kind of understanding. I think not just in the UK, this is a global problem. Yep. So we have to address from the point of the legal point of view, but of course, with all the expertise of the people that are working on this field.
Thank you. Any other questions? All right, maybe I would ask just briefly a follow-up question on that one. So to Rosa Giovanna. So I think in that question, we're exploring some aspects of permissionless ledgers where you have the civil resistance kind of algorithms to try to create an illusion of one person, one vote, which isn't really right, and all of these kinds of questions. Now, if we were in a permissioned ledger where the parties are known, then we can avoid some of those problems with the probabilistic voting having been final. But we still seem to have the problem of, even in this case, even in the permissioned ledger case, we still have the problem of the ledger taking some time to lodge a transaction or lodge a set of transactions or whatever it is the ledger records. Is there a space in either permissionless or permissioned ledgers for us to do something that is done in card payment networks, where we have a party that serves as a proxy for the entities that are transacting or facilitating transactions, that says, okay, I'm going to cover you. And even though this might not be final, we will achieve finality at some point, but even though it might not be final in the moment, you can get your cup of coffee now, because we will stand in that place to ensure that you can accept this payment. Do you see an avenue for this kind of mechanism and this kind of service provision?
Oh, okay, this is a good question. I mean, maybe if you can underline an agreement before, maybe we can reach that. But I can say that right now, I don't see, I will not work on this direction. I don't know. I think this is something that we have to really balance all the pros and cons and see from a different perspective, the legal one, the economic one, and of course, the technical one. So I think that really is something that must be addressed because the consequences are really devastating.
For me, this is the problem that you have something that at the beginning could be also potentially decentralized. But if you have a problem, in the current solutions, you find always centralized, I don't know, bodies, for example, and then finish, I promise. If you have a smart contract and you say, no, it's not good what you did, to think of the DAO, for example, no? Because you have a smart legal contract and the smart contract itself. And you say, no, I was wrong. And the person that used the smart contract technologically speaking, not the legal side, said, no, boys, I was allowed to do that because the smart contract is supposed to execute it. And if you want to reverse the transaction, you need to have something like an arbitrage, like something like that. It's a centralized solution, again. And the problem is this one. And I agree with Claudio, because the problem you see in the finality is very interesting, because you see the 2 points. At a certain point, why doing a blockchain if you go back to a centralized solutions to solve the problem? This is the why. The stablecoin is the second bridge I told you before, because after the exchange we have the stablecoin something more complex, because it's not only content, but sovereignty content. And for us as legal scholars, it's very relevant. Thank you so much to everyone.
Thank you for